And so we're exploring the Abbazia Defence in King's Gambit accepted, King's Knight's Gambit, e4, e5, f4, e takes f4, knight f3, and d5. This is the main line for Abbazia Defence, d5. So let's look at this game played between Mr. Boris Spassky and Mr. Bronstein, where Bronstein was black and Spassky was white, and Bronstein chose to play the Abbazia Defence. Now Bronstein lost this game, but analyzing this game, we'll be able to figure out some main ideas behind gambits generally, and some ideas behind the d5 line, the main line for Abbazia Defence. Now Mr. Boris Alterman has got an excellent gambit guide out. He's got many lectures in there. I've only gotten to the lecture number 17, and he talks about ideas behind gambits and analyzes lots of games, but from White's perspective mostly. So I urge you to look at that as well. Now, I feel quite out of league to, analyzing this game played between the grandmasters, but still, I'll get out of it what I can, according to my skill level. And if I make a mistake, please correct me. So e4, e5, f4, e takes f4, knight f3, d5. And Mr. Spassky now took this pawn on d5. So he takes d5. Now Bronstein brought his bishop out to d6. Knight c3 was the reply from Mr. Spassky. Now King's Knight brought out to e7. Please note this here. We'll come back to this in a minute, but please note where Bronstein is placing his pieces and really losing the tempi, losing the initiative. Mr. Boris Alterman talks about the main idea behind any gambit, and that is to develop your pieces very quickly and very rapidly to the best available squares towards the center, and at the same time to keep the initiative. Instead of trying to just develop passively, you have to be aggressive while playing a gambit. I think I'll agree to that. So d4. Now this is another idea in the King's Gambit accepted lines, to push the d pawn up the board at some point in time in the game. Bronstein castles short, and Spassky brings his king's bishop out to d3. Knight d7, castles, h6. I want you to pause here for a second and just look at the board. Look at black's position. The Abbazia Defence is a very playable line for black, at least as far as I have experienced it and as far as I have studied others' games, grandmasters' games. But if you look at the board right now, you can see that all of Mr. Bronstein's, almost all of Mr. Bronstein's pieces are resting on their home racks. And so if we were to look at the influence of Mr. Bronstein's army on the board, what we have is this bishop slicing through the board, perhaps the only active piece currently. And do we have any other major piece cutting through the board? No. This bishop here on c8 is blocked. The rooks are blocked in. And then we have the knight. These two knights here have some squares. And so this is pretty much it, I would say that black is limited to the 5th rank at the most. This is the rank that black's influence is to the most. But most of black's pieces are resting in their home ranks, and I don't see any initiatives for black here. I don't see any counterplay for black. And with the exception of this pawn, which is an advanced pawn, but it's very weak, and we're going to see in a minute that it's not going to do any good to Mr. Bronstein's play. So the game continues. Knight e4. Now Mr. Spassky brings his knight to the center of the board. Very strong square, e4, and this knight is pretty dangerous. So Bronstein has to get rid of it, and quick. Knight takes d5, c4, knight e3, takes with the bishop, bishop takes e3, f takes e3. Now this pawn is very, very weak. This pawn is, there is absolutely no way that Bronstein can defend this pawn. At the same time, if we look at the 12th move, which is 12c5 and bishop e7, now with the exception of this pawn, all of Bronstein's pieces are resting in their home ranks, you know, in the first two ranks. So you see this bishop here at e7, locked in. It has a little influence towards these two diagonals, the e7 h4 and e7 a3 diagonals. But other than that, I think it's pretty passive. It's not attacking or doing anything. Then we have the knight, which is pretty passive too. Just has a couple of attacking squares here, here, and here, and isn't really doing much. Other than these two pieces, there is absolutely no piece of black which is in the game. And that is very, very important to note. I think that is the biggest mistake black can make while playing King's Gambit Accepted. And as far as I can see, I mean, for the first time, when I saw this game for the first time, reaching to the 12th move, I saw that black was lost, you know. I didn't know the outcome, and I was watching it on a Java applet, which showed game of the day, and didn't tell me who versus who the game is, and what is the outcome of the game. And so I was watching the game. I was hitting the play button and just watching it, and I knew that black is lost here. You know, no initiatives, no counterplay. So 13 bishop c2 and rook e8 now tries to bring his rook. Bronstein tries to bring his rook to an open file. Queen d3. Now please note, this is a very dangerous battery towards the king that Mr. Spassky has formed. And we'll see in a minute a very brilliant sacrifice made by Mr. Spassky to open up this diagonal and remove his own knight from blocking the queen and the bishop. e2 pushes the pawn. Desperate try, I would say. Desperate try to gain at least some momentum, but too late, too late. Knight d6, and this is the sacrifice idea that I was talking about earlier. Now this knight here cannot be taken, and do you see why? If c takes d6, then queen h7 mate. So you can't take this knight. And I think knight f8 is a poor reply. Analysis shows that knight f6 was a better reply. Nevertheless, now the knight attacks the g7 pawn, sorry, f7 pawn, and the game is over. Nowhere to run. E takes f1, promoted to queen. Again, another desperate try, check. Rook takes. Now bishop comes out to f5. Queen takes. queen to d7, queen to f4, bishop f6, knight 3 e5, and the game is over. Here, black resigned.